Welcome back. The potential sale of the Washington Commanders is the big talker, of course. We know owner Dan Snyder has reached an agreement to sell the team for just over $6 billion to the Harris Group. But what exactly does all that mean? Joining us live to break it all down is Grant Paulsen, co-host of Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan. Good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Kristen. How are you?
Good, good. And I bet for the last 24 hours you've been doing somewhat of a happy dance after all this.
Yeah, I think most of DC sports fans have. It was amazing yesterday when the news finally broke. This has been long expected and much anticipated that there was a deal in place. We can go over the parameters of why it's non-exclusive and why the ink isn't dry yet. But it certainly looks like this is happening. And when the news broke just before I went on the air yesterday, we were able to spend hours reacting to it on Grant and Danny on the Fan. And we had callers calling in emotional, crying. We had people on their way to go buy season tickets. It was a pretty amazing day.
Well, and that's the thing. We mentioned it earlier in the show, too. The ink is not dry yet. This is in principle, and this is Dan Snyder we're talking about. Do you have any trepidation that something could go wrong?
I really don't. I know a lot of people do feel like they don't trust him enough to finish what he started here. But I think, Kristen, the writing's been on the wall for months. And I've been told for really dating back to the middle of the football season, he was selling this team. You know, he packed up his offices. His family and he and his wife are mostly living in London at this point. They're very rarely in the States, let alone at the facility in Ashburn. He stopped going to games, which would have been unheard of years ago. I will always wonder, and hopefully we'll eventually find out kind of what changed between October when it seemed like he had no interest in selling and early November when he announced that he was going to try to. That month there is fascinating to me. But really, since November 2nd, when he hired a bank to try to sell this team, it looked like every move he's made is to get it sold.
Right. And I know with Washington Commander fans would be happy for anybody else but than Dan Snyder to own this team. But the Harris Group, you have Josh Harris, Mitchell Rales, they're Maryland guys, Magic Johnson. What do you think about this group that is trying to purchase the Commanders?
Well, I really like the Rails addition, and I won't pretend to know him personally, but I like that he is a local person with DC ties. You know, I was told that there's a really good chance that he could be maybe the front-facing local member of this ownership group. Harris, as you know, owns the New Jersey Devils. He owns the Philadelphia 76ers and even a part of a soccer team overseas. He's busy. He owns teams. This is kind of what he does. I don't think he'll be operating out of Ashburn very frequently. I think Rails could be that guy. I think Magic Johnson could be a face for this operation as well. So it's exciting. I love the fact that the new owner of this team has owned other sports teams. I think that's really important. And I also think he's an analytically driven guy, which for people like me who like teams that are forward-thinking, I think that can be exciting. It'd be a huge departure of how Washington's operated for a long time.
You mentioned the emotional fans that you spoke to yesterday, and I've seen all the tweets from everybody, but even from former players are tweeting out. I know RG3 tweeted out the news yesterday. Not so much like, yes, finally, thank you, but a little bit of joy and about time in some of those tweets we're seeing.
Yeah, I think so, Kristen. I mean, look, nobody's going to come out, I don't think, and bash Dan Snyder or dance on his proverbial ownership grave, if you will, as he's selling this team. That said, what you have seen, mostly from those players you're talking about, but I think community-wide here is there is a collective breath of, a sigh of relief. There are happy people who feel like, in some cases, they're getting their team back. People that swore this organization off because of Dan Snyder, that stopped going to games or buying gear or stopped even watching games until he was gone, they get their team back. And for the rest of us who have still been invested in some capacity, media, fan, or otherwise, I think it's an opportunity finally to see this team win and succeed, which under Dan Snyder's ownership, as we found out over 24 seasons with 2 playoff wins, was not going to happen. And so it's just, now you can hope again. I really think that's the difference.
It's so much just lighter in the district. It just feels lighter here. Grant, so good to see you. I know you guys are going to continue to talk about this, especially the name change. We couldn't get to that, but I'm curious to see what you guys talk about on the radio. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, KB. It's great talking to you. Have a wonderful day.
You too, and you can count on WUSA 9 to stay on top of the story. For updates anytime, download the WUSA 9 app on your phone or stream us for free on WUSA 9 Plus. It's available for Roku and Fire TV, and you can hear Grant and Danny at 2 p.m. on The Fan.